Rakta Yahweh, Bashem Yahushai, Bashem Kudash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is And Be Thou a God Unto Thou. And this is pretty much centered around Ezekiel, the 38th chapter. And pretty much this is a little bit of reading and some information I was gathering on Friday prior to camp. And we wanted to go over this at the camp, but it never got to that, because the Spirit had to go in a different direction. So I just wanted to hit a couple of points here within the first few verses of this chapter, and pretty much just to show you how everything is lining up with prophecy. So those of you that have been studying for a while, you already know the breakdown to Ezekiel 38, and it's pretty much speaking about end time prophecies, speaking about Gog and Magog. Gog is the people and Magog is the land. And pretty much today that would be known as Russia. And Russia also is, for lack of better words, highlighted in biblical prophecy in the last days. Because this scripture here in Ezekiel 38 is speaking about the last days. Ezekiel 39 also speaking about the last days, and then after the destruction. And then in Revelation, the 20th chapter is the only other time that this is mentioned in prophecy. So when we go to Revelation 20:7, it says, when the 1,000 years are expired, and you have to go to the first verse to understand what those 1,000 years are. It says, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison. This already happened. This happened during the time of the Renaissance period. And shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth. And that's exactly what they did. They deceived the nations in the four quarters of the earth by something called iconoclasm, plantation / Renaissance Christianity, and the image of the Heavenly Father and His Son, so on and so forth, being painted as so-called white people. That was one of the great deceptions. Now, in prophecy of Revelation 20, we're at the point now where we're at the latter end of this, being loosed out of his prison. We're at the latter end of that, when they're about to be put back down where they belong. And after this great deception, in the midst of that, the Lord was going to gather together these nations, as you see happening right now over there in the Middle East. Which you have, I'm not sure if they put them down there already. I believe in the land of Israel, you had American troops. I forget if it was 25,000 or whatever the case was there. A bunch of American weapons of war, in that area. Because all of that area over there is being prepped for what's happening right now, which biblically is known as World War III. Or the third woe. So it says, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, which goes back to what we'll be reading in Ezekiel 30, or going to read in Ezekiel 38, and the 39th chapter also goes into it. Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea, which goes into Armageddon, Harmageddon, which is the mountain of the troops. All right, so just bear with me 1 second. I'm just looking up something real quick. Let me go to images. I just want to see what they paint. All right, when you go to an ancient map, Gog, Magog, Gomer, Togarmah, 1874 map, they show you that Magog today would be in Georgia, Russia. All right. And Georgia, Russia at one time was a part of the Russian Empire, the Soviet Union, or the USSR, United Socialist Soviet Republic. All right, that's what they were called before they broke up. All right, so let's go to Ezekiel, the 38th chapter. We're going to start at 1, and we're going to go through a few points here. All right, it says, "And the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog." Gog represents the so-called Russians today. The land of Magog represents Russia today. All right, and that land known as Georgia, Russia, was inhabited at one point by the ancient Japhites, which are brown-skinned people. When you do your research, your due diligence, you know, you have the Etruscans. When you look up Etruscans and images of Etruscans, you see brown-skinned people. You see people known as the Minoans, which were brown-skinned people. And then you have the Picts, or the pictorial people, and others that are also Japhetic. These were all brown-skinned people that ruled throughout the Mediterranean Sea, the lands known as Greece and Italy and all of that. Today, they ruled all of those regions in that area, what the so-called scholars today call Europe. All right, the original Europeans were brown-skinned people, and this was prior to the so-called white men, the Edomites, going in and taking it over. And then after a period of time, the so-called Negroes, which are Israelites, Negroes, you know, the Southern Kingdom took over Europe, you know, for a period of 1,000 years. All right, so there's a lot of history in different time periods that where different nations ruled Europe, but the world will make you believe that only so-called white people ruled Europe, and that's not the truth. All right, so let's go back and read that again, and let's move on. So this is verse 2. "Son of man, set thy face against God, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him." Now, when you look up a map of Meshech and Tubal, right? Meshech and Tubal are located in what today would be known as Turkey. All right? Let's see what we got. Let's see what they'll give me here. And you know, you could do this yourself. You could just go to Google and type in Meshech Tubal map, and they'll, for the most part, give you areas around Turkey, Armenia, and those areas there. Let me see if I can find a good one. Like I said, you just gotta do your due diligence. You know, you look it up, and you'll find the information. It's harder to find certain type of information today because, you know, they're removing stuff, and, you know, when you do research, they'll redirect you somewhere else, or they'll say that you know that those facts are lies, and, you know, so you have to do your research. You know, scripture say, let every man be fully persuaded in his own mind. Let's see, I'm trying to see. Well, this is the same one that we just had. And it puts Togarmah, Meshech, and Tubal right there in the land of, you know, Turkey and Armenia, in that region. All right. So let's go back. It says, "And prophesy against him." Verse 3. "And say, Thus saith the Lord power, behold, I am against thee, O God, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal." And as you've heard Elder Pastor go over this chief prince, which is Ra'ash Shar, which is where you get the word Russia. Ra'ash Shar, which is chief prince. Some places on the map will label them as Rosh, Rosh. You have Russia, you have Belarus, you have Prussia, so on and so forth. Okay. So Meshach and Tubal would be in the land of Turkey today. Now, what I did was I typed in Russian Turkey relations, right? Just bear with me 1 second. All right, Russian Turkey relations have pretty much, they've been, battling back and forth. There'll be times when they'll come into a union and they'll be fighting against certain things and so on and so forth. And we have to remember that Ezekiel 38 is last day or latter day prophecy. So we have to look at not the past and what happened in the past, but what's happening right now in the future, because that's the point that we're in prophecy. So when you look up Russia-Turkey relations, right, it'll tell you, that they were at odds with each other. It was off and on from the 16th century to the early 20th century, so on and so forth. They were usually kind of adverse and hostile to each other. There were Russo-Turkish wars, so on and so forth. And as you continue reading on, because Turkey, by the way, Turkey joined NATO in 1952. So when you read further down, it says, this is in Wikipedia. It says, following the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, relations between Turkey and Russia improved significantly. Why? Because now we're pushing into, latter day, prophecy. It didn't matter what their relationship was before. It matters of what they are bonded or union together in the last days. And the two countries came to rank among each other's largest trade partners. Russia became Turkey's largest provider of energy, while many Turkish companies began to operate in Russia. In the 1990s, Turkey became the top foreign destination for Russian tourists. All right, and it goes into other history. When we jump down to Soviet Union and Turkey, it says friendship between the world wars. The Soviet Union and the new Turkish government, notice it's a new Turkish governments, were outsiders to the great powers and gravitated towards each other after World War I, according to Oner, whatever that is. It's some looks like Turkish writing. Beginning in 1920, bitterness against the post-war international order drove Soviet-Turkish relations. Nationalist Turkish and internationalist Bolsheviks laid to rest 4 centuries of rivalry between their imperial predecessors as they found themselves in a convergence that each side defined as anti-imperialist. At the heart of their cooperation was a geopolitical alignment that sought to shield the greater Black Sea region from Western intrusions, meaning America and others. All the way up to the final hours of peace in 1939, the first principle that guided Turkish diplomacy was good neighborly relations with Moscow in the context of friendship rather than subordination. See? So they're coming together in this union, and that's important to know because of end time prophecy. Now you can read more if you want, but we got the point. Now going back to Ezekiel 38, because all prophecies will be fulfilled. All prophecies are being fulfilled, all prophecies must be fulfilled, and all prophecies will be fulfilled. We have a more sure word of prophecy. Now back in Ezekiel 38 and 4, it says, and I will turn thee back. So he said he's against God, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal, because right now, in the last days, there will be the chief prince or one of the top allies to Turkey, right? So the Lord said, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws. So when you put hooks into somebody's jaws, it means you're pulling them and turning them back in a different direction than what they were going in. Because at one time, you had the USSR, under the Soviet, rule or regime. And now, under that communist regime, And now the Lord is pretty much turning them back in that direction. This is why they're going to places that used to be a part of Russia and fighting to get those lands back. You know, because those are part of the lands that are going to join in the book of Jeremiah, the 50 or the 51st chapter, where it says a group of countries from the North Country or something along those lines. You know, it's all done to fulfill prophecy. So the Lord is bringing them back into that old way. You know, because you have to remember that today, what we're seeing in the news and, you know, in the world today, geopolitically, with all these different rulers of these different nations, is pretty much being controlled behind the scenes to a certain degree. But there's going to come a time when the Most High is going to slap, you know, control out of these so-called international banking families and their flunkies away from them, and pretty much set them in the direction that the Lord wants them to go. And the only reason why they're doing what they do is because that's part of the Lord's plan. Right? It says, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth in all thine army. And Russia has a very great army. 1/5 of the Russian army is going to be headed out into this battle, to this war of Armageddon. Only 1/6 of Russia's military is going to be left in the land of Russia to protect the homeland or the fatherland, or however you want to say it. And you can find that in the book of Ezekiel, the 39th chapter. It says horses and horsemen, which is a representation of, you know, their weapons, you know, their tanks, planes, or whatever they have, drones, missiles, hypersonic missiles. It says all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, because when you're clothed with armor, that means that you're preparing for battle. And Russia is providing a lot of these different allied nations to them with weapons, with, you know, natural gas and so on and so forth. And that's what this whole war between Israel and Hamas is all about. It's all about, you know, cutting the world out of, you know, the dependency of oil from Russia and Iran, places like that, and them cornering the market through, I believe it's a pipeline, if I'm not mistaken, that they're trying to run through the land of Arabia all the way up into the Mediterranean Sea. You know, and the people there, the Ishmaelite people that are there occupying that land are in the way. You know, I don't have all of the, you know, the details of every little detail, but something along those lines. Right? It says all of them clothed with all sorts of armor. Why? Because they're preparing for battle. Even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords, right? Because all of them have militaries. All of these different nations that Russia is allied to, they all have a strong military. And Russia is going to be guarding them, protecting them, you know, being like a bodyguard to them. It says, the first one it says right here is what? Persia. Now, Persia is the ancient name for Iran. Iran's name was changed to, Persia was changed to Iran back in 1935. Where they no longer decided to call themselves Persians, they wanted to call themselves by the name of Iran. And that's what they call that today. So what I did was I typed in Russian-Iranian relations, and it came up as Iran-Russia relations on Wikipedia. It says the relations between the Grand Duchy of Moscow and the Persian Empire, Iran, officially commenced in 1521. With the Safavids in power, past and present contact between Russia and Iran have long been complicatedly multifaceted, often wavering between collaboration and rivalry. The two nations have a long history of geographic, economic, and social-political interactions. Mutual relations have often been turbulent and dormant at other times. Until 1720, on the surface, relations between Iran and Russia were largely friendly, and the two operated on a level of equity. After 1720, with Peter the Great's attack on Iran and the establishment of the Russian Empire, the first of a long series of campaigns was initiated against Iran and the Caucasus. The Russian Empire had an oppressive role in Iran during the 19th and the early 20th centuries, which harmed Iran's development and during most of the ensuing Soviet period. The shadow of the big northern neighbor continued to impend, and notice to call it the northern neighbor. Like it speaks about it in the book of either Jeremiah 51 or 50. Since the fall of the Soviet Union, the two neighboring nations have generally enjoyed very close, cordial relations. Because remember, it's not what their relationships were, if it were rocky or they were bumping heads at one point or another, but what their relations are now in the end. Iran and Russia are strategic allies and form an axis in the Caucasus alongside Armenia. All right, and it's no coincidence that Meshech and Tubal are bordering somewhere along the line of Turkey and Armenia. Iran and Russia are also military allies in the conflicts in Syria and Iraq, and partners in Afghanistan and post-Soviet Central Asia. The Russian Federation is also the chief supplier of arms and weaponry to Iran. See? So not only do they have, amicable relations, but also, Russia is providing Iran with weapons. Due to Western economic sanctions on Iran, Russia has become a key trading partner, especially in regard to the former's excess oil reserve. And that's dealing with Russia, and that's also dealing with Iran. Currently, Russia and Iran share a close economic and military alliance, and both countries are subject to heavy sanctions by most Western nations. And why is this? Because this is fulfilling biblical prophecy. All right? And it goes on and on and on. You can read more. But I'm going to stop it there. So back in Ezekiel 38 and 5, it says Persia. The next one is who? Ethiopia. All right? So what I did was I typed in Russian-Ethiopian relations. And what came up on Wikipedia was Ethiopia-Russia relations. Ethiopia and Russia established diplomatic relations on April 21st, 1943. Notice this is like more modern. Russia currently has an embassy in Addis Ababa, and Ethiopia has an embassy in Moscow. The Ethiopian ambassador to Russia is also accredited to Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Moldova, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Ukraine, and Uzbekistan. Let's see. I didn't really read a whole lot of this, but we see that they have relationship, and I'm pretty sure they had their ups and downs and probably wars against each other, whatever the case may be. But it's not what happened in the past, it's what's happening right now. So it says current relations. Let's see. During the Ethiopian-Eritrean War of the 1990s, I always have a hard time saying that word, Eritrean. Russia provided fighter jets and pilots to the Ethiopian Air Force. During the Tigray War, Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov said the issue was an internal affair of Ethiopia and that Russia supported the Ethiopian government efforts. The two sides also expressed the need to strengthen exchanges and cooperation in the field of education, science, and technology. Right. So they had some problems because they didn't agree with the Ethiopians didn't agree with the Russian-Ukrainian wars and some other stuff, right? But it says this is under relations since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. On August 23, 2023, that was early this year, at the 15th BRICS summit, Russia, along with the other members of BRICS, formally invited Ethiopia to join the organization. Ethiopia will be a full member starting January 1st, 2024, which is a couple of months from now. All right, and it goes on and on and on. So we got two nations out of here, out of Ezekiel 38:5, Persia or Iran and Ethiopia. And they both happen to have relations with Russia to this very day. Then it goes on to say, and Libya with them. Libya is in North Africa. So I typed in Russian-Libyan relations. And I got Libya-Russia relations on Wikipedia. It says, Libya-Russia relations are the bilateral relations between the state of Libya and the Russian Federation. Russia has an embassy in Tripoli, with Libya having an embassy in Moscow. Diplomatic contact between Russia and Libya has generally been close and productive, seeing as both countries have had and continue to see volatile relations with the United States, and it's no coincidence. Former Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi was a close ally of the Soviet Union. Despite his country's membership in the non-aligned movement, Russia also regards Libya as one of its strongest allies in the Arab world and has supported stabilization of the country following the aftermath of the Libyan civil war. After the outbreak of new conflict, Russia has primarily backed the Tobruk-based House of Representatives over the UN-backed Government of National Accord and various other factions. And like I said, you can read more on it, but that's pretty much, the gist of it, that they have friendly relations, strong ties. They are a very strong ally to Russia, the Libyans. And that is according to biblical prophecy. All right. So it says all of them with shield and helmet, because remember, Russia is providing some of these nations not only with resources, but also with military weaponry. All right, as we read about, I believe it was Iran that they had given weapons to. Now we go to verse 6. It says, Gomer and all his bands. Now Gomer is also in the land of Turkey. All right, some point place it right in the land of Turkey. Some, towards the end, going more towards Georgia and Armenia, but nevertheless, it's still in the land of what today is known as Turkey. All right, and that's Gomer. And matter of fact, when we look up the word Gomer in the Hebrew, which is the word, it says, blue letter yourself. It says Gomer complete, the eldest son of Japheth and grandson of Noah, the progenitor of the early Sumerians and other branches of the Celtic family, right? Which the early ones were not. The early ones pretty much were Japhetic. They're not the so-called white people that are there today. Even though some of them Celtics or Irish are Jakes, the original people that were in those lands were brown-skinned people, Japhetic people. All right, and it says here the Cimmerians, Cimmerians. Now, who are the Cimmerian people? When we go to, once again, to, where was that? I had something. I just typed in on Google, who are the Cimmerians? Cimmerian, member of an ancient people living north of the Caucasus and the Sea of Asaf, driven by the Scythians, because the Scythians were Israelites, and they drove out the Cimmerian people out of that land, out of southern Russia, over the Caucasus, and into what? Anatolia, toward the end of the 8th century BC. So now Anatolia, when you look up Anatolia is the ancient name for that region today called Turkey. It underwent a lot of different name changes. Today it's Turkey. And then in the ancient times it was known as Anatolia, that whole region right there. All right, so those people that are there today, which are Turks, Ottoman Turks, a lot of them descend also from the Cimmerian peoples, which were driven out of there by Jake down further down into Turkey. And why did that happen? To fulfill prophecy, because the Lord was strategically placing everyone where they needed to be for end time prophecy. All right, the king's heart is in the Lord's hand. You know, as the rivers of water, He turneth it whithersoever He wants. And then we have, when we go back to Ezekiel 38:6, it says, Gomer and all his bands, which are, mean all of their military, the house of Togarmah of the north quarters, and all his bands, and many people with thee. Now, when we look up the word Togarmah, right, Togarmah is also within the land of Turkey. The word in the Hebrew is Togarmah, Togarmah, right? It says territory settled by the descendants of Togarmah, probably the area known as Armenia. We look up Togarmah in Wikipedia. And you can go to other places. It says Togarmah, it says here Georgian, is a figure in the table of nations in Genesis 10, the list of descendants of Noah that represents the people known as the ancient Hebrews. Togarmah is among the descendants of Japheth, correct. And is thought to represent some people located in Anatolia. And what is Anatolia? Anatolia would be known as the land that's called today Turkey. The scriptures in the New Testament call it Asia Minor. Asia Minor, ancient name was Anatolia. Anatolia, Asia Minor, Turkey. Right? It says Anatolia, also known as Asia Minor, is a large peninsula in West Asia and in the westernmost extension of continental Asia. The landmass of Anatolia constitutes most of the territory of contemporary Turkey. All right? So you got that? So all of that land, all of that region there, these are all nations that have a strong relation with Russia. All right? They all have a strong relation with Russia. I thought I had something else. Thought I had another tab. Let me see what's this here. Okay, Togarmah, boom, boom, that's done, that's done, that's done. Right, and we were reading about the relationship that Russia had with Turkey. We read that earlier, Russia-Turkey relations. All right, so it shows you that the Lord is lining everything up according to prophecy. And prophecy does not lie. And the Lord told Russia to be a guard unto these nations. All right, so I'm going to read that again, verse 6, Ezekiel 36, Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togarmah of the north quarters, and all his bands and many people with thee. Be thou prepared and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. And they are being a guard, they are watching over these nations. They're being a bodyguard, and they also providing them with resources, military weapons, whatever they need. You know, that's what friends are for. Allies. All right. So with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. To the next time I say, Shalom.